Hi everyone. So I'm going to be talking about planting your seeds or getting your seeds started so that you can have some great growing plants when it comes time for getting your garden in. Now, what you see in front of you right now is a takeout container. These make fantastic seed starting trays and they're readily available, and it's such a great way to reuse some of our materials so that they don't end up in landfills. So a seed starting tray is essentially a container that you can either put holes into. Sometimes it's not necessary if you have adequate airflow. So for that, sometimes what I'll do is I'll put holes in the bottom of the tray itself. If I'm going to be using it as a greenhouse per se, right? Like let's say I want to insulate the soil and make it warm and give those seeds a really cozy environment for them to start growing, then what I may do is take the container and put holes into the container so that there's some aeration. And once the soil is in, the seeds have been planted and watered, then I'll cover it with that with the lid that has the holes in it so that the moisture stays inside, the temperature stays warm, but there's still good airflow so that you have less chances of things like rot or fungus. Now, if you have holes inside your tray and you don't require that heat for your seeds to get started, what you can also do with the lid is I use it as a tray to capture the water once it goes through that takeout container that has holes in it. So let's say some of your herbs that don't require a ton of heat to germinate. What I may do is I'll put the holes in here, put the tray down to catch the water, and then just use it like that, and then you can get started. Now, getting started with planting our seeds. One of the things that I like to do, as I've mentioned in the past, seeds don't require soil in order to grow. Once they get growing and have established root systems, or even just the beginning of a root system, then they require nutrition from the soil in order to keep growing. But to get them started, you really don't need a lot of nutrition outside of the seed itself. For that, you just need a seed starting mix if you're starting inside soil. So for a seed starting mix, it's a really light and airy mixture that allows for air to come through and also for those roots that are just beginning to develop, for them to be able to find pockets so that they can move through and just get themselves started nicely. So for that seed starting, I'm just gonna sprinkle in my seed starting mix. You can level it out, you don't have to pat it down. And really what happens at this point is you're just going to water in the seed starting mix just so that it has a little bit more density to it. It has a little bit more depth and that it's holding the water that the seeds need in order for them to be able to start that germination process. So now what we have is we have a seed starting mix that's been mixed in with some water, and you're going to get a really light kind of, I would not say it's like a batter of any sort. It almost feels like cookie crumbs. When you play around with it, definitely play with your soil. When you're playing around with it, it's gonna have like a cookie crumb kind of texture to it. And then once it's saturated enough, and you're gonna know that when you can not make it into a ball per se, but it definitely has a sticky kind of wet texture to it and crumbly, and the crumbs can stick together. Once it's at that stage, all you have to do is follow the information on your seed packet and plant those seeds accordingly. A rule of thumb that we like to use as master gardeners is 3 times the size of the seed itself. So if the seed is teeny tiny, really all you're doing is making a dent in the soil and then planting the seeds according to the space and depth requirements that you'll find on the packet. If you're doing the scattering method, like let's say you've got carrots or you've got a salad mix, those seeds are so small. There's no way that you're just going to get in 1 to 2 seeds per dent in the soil. What you could do at that point is just scatter the seeds over this. And once they're in there, water them in again so that there's something really grounding them and giving them that nice, warm, humid environment that they need to start growing. When they start growing, gently pluck out the healthiest seedlings and then plant them into your container or rows so that you get that, that space that they need in order to grow to their best. Now, once you have this mixture, what you can do, like I had mentioned before, is you can take the cover, use it on top, and now you have like a greenhouse situation, right? You can poke some holes in the top. You're gonna get steam kind of coming up in there. You're gonna see it get a little foggy, and that's a good sign. That means that there's moisture and heat inside that soil mix, exactly what the seeds want. Now, let's say you've got those seedlings growing, and now you wanna use this tray to plant into. So what I would do at this point is, this was just a basic empty tray. Now what I would do is I would put in my potting mix. This potting mix has really good nutrition in it. It has the perlite that helps it absorb the water that the plants will need over time. It keeps the soil moist and nutritious for those seedlings. What you're gonna do is you're gonna put in your potting mix, go ahead and saturate that with water as well. Give those seedlings a good start to their growing process, and then following the instructions on the seed packet. So let's say a seed requires 1/2 inch of distance, right? So some of our lettuce seeds can go fairly close together. So you're just gonna make those indentations within your soil, and then get your seedlings that you've plucked out of that original planting and get them into this tray. Now let's say you have bigger seeds that you didn't have to scatter and that have, a very easy, just size and shape that you can get into the ground. Such as, for example, let's say pumpkin seeds. And those are fairly large. What you're going to do then, once again, look at the requirements they need in terms of space, pour in your potting mix, saturate that with water, and then plant them accordingly. If you're going to then take this and plant them out into your garden, you can go ahead and cover them with the tray to give them that warm, moist environment just to get them started. Once they're growing nicely, you can take that cover off. So typically when I start to see 1 to 2 inches of growth, I take off the greenhouse cover or the cover that I've put on top. Let them grow so that they're nice and hardy, and then you can move them out into their final place where they're going to be growing into well-established plants. So as you can see, to get your seeds started in a tray is not difficult at all. I have even used old baking trays. I've used aluminum foil trays left over from the holidays, takeout containers, any kind of container you have. We also have gardeners that have used cardboard boxes to get their seeds started in. They just go ahead and use the soil mix, saturate it, and since cardboard can break down fairly easy in the soil, many times they'll just take the cardboard and plant it right into the garden. So there's so many ways that you can get your seeds started indoors and then move it to the outside place where you're going to have your garden growing.